It was supposed to be a normal weekend, just another lazy Saturday hanging out at Ethan's place, playing video games and eating whatever junk food his mom had stashed in the pantry. We were halfway through a Mario Kart tournament when his dad walked in wearing a fitted gym tee that showed off arms no man over 40 had any business having. "Ethan, you still skipping leg day?" his dad joked, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. He caught my eye and smirked. "What about you? You ever hit the gym or just press buttons?" I shrugged with a grin. "Mostly buttons," he chuckled, clearly amused. "Well, if you ever want to do more than button mash, I've got a guest pass. Come tomorrow morning. I'll show you a real workout." I was about to laugh it off, but Ethan raised an eyebrow at me. "You should go," he said. "Might be fun. You always say you want to get in better shape." I looked between the two of them, thinking it would never happen. "All right," I said. "Why not?" I didn't know it yet, but that decision would lead to one of the most awkward and confusing mornings of my life. Mr. Carter picked me up at 9 a.m. sharp the next day. I was still groggy from staying up too late, but he looked wide awake and way too energized for a weekend. He was in a fitted hoodie and joggers, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He handed me a smoothie as I got in the car. "Protein, banana, almond butter," he said, starting the engine. "Fuel up." I took a sip, expecting it to taste like chalk, but it was surprisingly good. The gym was one of those fancy boutique places with big windows, expensive machines, and not a single person who looked like they didn't know what they were doing. I instantly felt underdressed in my old college tee and basketball shorts. Mr. Carter seemed right at home, greeting the staff by name and leading me straight to the weight room. For the next hour, he put me through what I can only describe as a controlled humiliation. It wasn't that he was trying to embarrass me. He was actually super encouraging, but compared to him, I looked like I had the upper body strength of a wet napkin. "Keep your back straight," he said, stepping behind me to adjust my form during rows. His hand rested briefly on my waist to reposition me, firm but not rough. I could feel the heat of his palm through the fabric. "There you go." I didn't know why that stuck with me. We kept going. Squats, pull-ups, well, his pull-ups, my attempts. Then core work on the mat. He was patient, focused, clearly in his element, and through all of it, I couldn't help noticing the way his shirt clung to his chest, how his breath came in slow, steady rhythms. He was composed, controlled, way too attractive for a guy who was technically old enough to be my dad. "You're stronger than you think," he said at one point, kneeling next to me as I collapsed after a plank. "You just don't believe it yet." Something about the way he said that, his voice low, close, made the air feel heavier. We finished with some stretches. My body ached in ways I didn't know it could. Mr. Carter led me toward the locker room, tossing me a towel as we went. "Steam room's free if you want to relax," he said. I usually hit it for a few minutes. The locker room was quiet when we walked in, just the sound of water echoing from the showers in the back. I found an empty bench and peeled off my soaked shirt, muscles trembling. Mr. Carter was already at his locker, pulling off his top, revealing a torso that looked sculpted by time and discipline. I tried not to look. I really tried. But my eyes flicked up for just a second. Too long. When I looked away, I realized I was holding my breath. Then I heard him behind me. "You good?" I turned slightly. He was standing just a few feet away now, towel around his waist, bottle of water in hand. His eyes lingered. Not in a weird way, but like he was studying me. Like he knew something I didn't. "Yeah," I said quickly. "Just wiped." He nodded. "You get used to it." I thought that was the end of it. I turned back toward my locker, trying to calm the strange buzz under my skin. But then he said something that made me pause, mid-movement. "You've been checking me out all morning." I went completely still. It felt like every sound in the locker room faded. The dripping pipes, the soft echo of someone moving in the showers, even my own breathing. All I could hear was my heartbeat pounding against my ribs. I turned to look at him. Sure, I'd misheard. But no, Mr. Carter was standing there, towel hanging low on his hips, arms crossed loosely over his chest, expression unreadable. Not angry, not laughing, just waiting. I wasn't, I managed, though even I didn't sound convinced. My voice cracked halfway through the sentence. He gave a slow exhale, not annoyed, more like he was choosing his next words carefully. "Hey," he said, softer now, "relax. It's not a big deal, which somehow made it an even bigger deal. He stepped closer, not invading my space, just narrowing the distance in a way that made my skin prickle. His tone stayed calm, almost clinical, but his eyes held something else entirely. I work with bodies all day, he said quietly. Physical therapy means I notice when people look. You weren't exactly subtle. Heat rushed to my face. Sorry, I muttered, wishing the floor would swallow me. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Uncomfortable? He repeated, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. If I was uncomfortable, I would have said something. That threw me off completely. I didn't know what to do with my hands, so I just held onto my towel like a lifeline. The room felt smaller, warmer. My brain was scrambling for an explanation, a joke, anything to make things less awkward. But then he lowered his voice even more. I just wanted to make sure you knew I noticed. My pulse jumped. Why? He didn't answer right away. He leaned one shoulder against the lockers, like he was settling into the moment instead of trying to escape it. His breathing was steady, slow, controlled, like he was measuring the energy between us. Because, he said finally, I've worked with people long enough to know when something's mutual. My stomach dropped, or twisted, or both. Mutual? I repeated, barely above a whisper. He didn't nod, didn't smile, didn't move. He just held my gaze, and somehow that said more than anything. And suddenly I was hyper-aware of everything around me. The distant hiss of the steam room, the sound of someone's locker slamming 2 rows away, the faint smell of eucalyptus from the gym showers. My hands were shaking, and I wasn't even sure if it was fear or something dangerously close to excitement. Look, he said, straightening a little, voice steady again. I'm not trying to put you in a weird position. I'm not asking for anything, and I wouldn't act on anything, even if I wanted to. Even if I wanted to. Those words stuck to the inside of my skull like glue. I just didn't want you to feel embarrassed, he said. I know what it's like to be young, confused, and trying to pretend you're not looking. My throat tightened. I wasn't. He gave me a look that shut that down immediately. Not harsh, just knowing. You're not in trouble, he said. Not with me. Silence wrapped around us again, warm and heavy. I realized then that he was giving me an out, an easy path to laugh it off, pretend nothing happened, change the subject. But instead of taking it, I heard myself say, so it was mutual? This time, his smile was softer, smaller, almost sad, like he knew exactly how dangerous this conversation was. I'm not answering that, he said, and you know why. He turned then, reaching into his locker for his shirt. The moment should have ended there. Should have dissolved into normal gym awkwardness so we could both move on with our lives. But right before he pulled the shirt over his head, he added, just know that I noticed, and I didn't mind. My breath caught. He slid the shirt on, grabbed his duffel, and nodded toward me like nothing monumental had just happened. Take your time, he said, his voice back to normal. I'll wait for you by the front. Then he walked out, leaving me standing there half-dressed, heart pounding, every thought in my head tangled into one impossible knot. I sat down on the bench, slowly, my hands still trembling. Because whatever happened in that locker room wasn't nothing. It wasn't innocent, it wasn't misinterpreted, it was real. And it was only the beginning. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the steam room to hiss on and off twice. Long enough for 2 older guys to walk in, grab fresh towels, and not even glance my way. Long enough for the adrenaline in my bloodstream to settle into something even more confusing. Eventually, I forced myself to stand, toss on my clean shirt, and head out of the locker room. My legs still felt shaky, and not just from the workout. Mr. Carter was waiting near the front desk, scrolling through something on his phone. When he saw me, he didn't act weird or tense. He just nodded, completely calm, like we hadn't just had the most intense conversation of my life, while only partially dressed 2 rooms away. Ready? He asked. I nodded. My voice felt unreliable, so I didn't risk opening my mouth. We walked out to the car in silence, a normal silence. Not awkward, not heavy, but everything inside me felt flipped upside down. I kept replaying his words, the look he gave me, the way he'd said he didn't mind. Mutual. Even if I wanted to, I didn't mind. My brain was trying to file all of it somewhere, but every drawer was already overflowing. Once we were in the car, he started the engine and adjusted the AC. Only then did he glance my way. "How are you feeling?" he asked casually, like he was talking about the workout, not my emotional meltdown. I cleared my throat. Sore, mostly in my pride. He laughed. A real, relaxed laugh, and for a moment that eased the tension in my chest. "You did good," he said. "First time's always rough." I nodded, staring out the window as the gym disappeared behind us. "About earlier," I began, though I wasn't even sure what I planned to say. He didn't let me finish. "Hey," he said gently, keeping his eyes on the road. "You don't need to explain anything. And you definitely don't need to apologize." I wasn't going to apologize, I said before I could stop myself. He glanced at me again. This time, slower, more thoughtful. "Okay," he said quietly. "Then what were you going to do?" I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. "I just didn't expect any of that." "That's fair. I thought I was being subtle." He huffed out a soft laugh. "You weren't." That made me blush so hard I had to lean back and stare at the ceiling. "But you didn't make it weird," he added quickly. "And I don't want you thinking you did." My voice came out small. "I didn't?" "No," he said firmly. "Trust me, if you had, we wouldn't be talking about it. And we definitely wouldn't be heading home like normal." That shut me up. We drove the rest of the way in a quiet, warm silence, not filled with tension, just awareness. I kept stealing glances at him, wondering how he could stay so composed when I felt like my insides were doing somersaults. When we pulled up to Ethan's house, he turned off the engine but didn't get out immediately. He rested one hand lightly on the steering wheel, thinking. "Listen," he said finally, voice calm but low. "Whatever you felt, or think you felt, back there, I'm not judging, I'm not upset, and I'm not going to treat you any differently." I nodded, staring at my shoes. "But," he continued, and this time there was something heavier in his tone, "I'm also not going to cross any lines. You know why." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I know. You're a good kid," he said. "Smart, decent, considerate. There's nothing wrong with you being curious. But some things have to stay just that, curiosity. Nothing more." Something in my chest tightened, though it wasn't disappointment exactly. It was something more complicated, something like understanding. "Right," I said, forcing myself to meet his eyes. "I get it." He studied me for a moment, almost like he was checking to make sure I really meant that. Then he nodded. "Good." He reached for his gym bag and opened his door. "Let's get inside. Ethan's probably still in his pajamas pretending he doesn't know what day it is." I laughed softly at that, thankful for the brief return to normalcy. But as I followed him up the driveway, one thought clung stubbornly to the back of my mind. Just because nothing happened didn't mean nothing was there, and I had a feeling the weird tension between us wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. The rest of the day should have felt normal. It almost did. Ethan was exactly where his dad predicted, on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, cereal bowl balanced on his chest, watching some sci-fi show he'd probably already seen 10 times. "Bro, you look dead," he said the second he saw me. "My dad kill you?" "Pretty much," I muttered, shuffling past him. Every muscle in my legs felt like rubber. Mr. Carter just chuckled as he walked into the kitchen. "He did great." I felt heat crawl up my neck for reasons Ethan definitely didn't need to know about. "Cool," Ethan said, shoving another spoonful of cereal into his mouth. "Next time, go alone so he can torture you without dragging our family name into it." Mr. Carter shot him a look. "You could come too, you know." "Ha! No thanks." Ethan turned the volume back up. "I prefer not dying." I sank into the armchair across from him, trying to will my heartbeat back to normal. Everything in the living room looked the same as always. The mismatched couches, the faded rug, the smell of coffee lingering from breakfast. But somehow, it all felt slightly tilted, like the world had shifted a few degrees while Ethan slept in. Part of me kept replaying those few minutes in the locker room, the look in Mr. Carter's eyes, the calm, steady voice, the line he said, the one he wouldn't cross. the one he expected me to understand. But there was something else, too. He didn't mind. That kept looping in my head, like a song I couldn't turn off. "Dude," Ethan said suddenly, squinting at me, "why do you look like you're thinking about a math test?" "Huh?" I blinked, forcing myself to sit up straighter. "Just tired." "Drink water. My dad pushes people until they puke." "Inspiring," I mumbled. Mr. Carter walked back into the room then, holding 2 bottles of electrolyte drink, one blue, one red. Without even asking, he placed the red one in my hand. "You need this," he said. "Trust me." Our fingers brushed for half a second. Just half a second. But my pulse jumped like I'd been plugged into an outlet. He didn't react outwardly, just gave a small nod and walked upstairs, probably to shower and change. Ethan didn't notice anything. He was too focused on his show, but for me the contact was enough to send my thoughts spiraling all over again. I cracked open the drink, hoping the cold rush of flavor would ground me. It helped, a little, but the shift between us, that stayed. After about 10 minutes, Ethan groaned dramatically and rolled off the couch. "All right, I got a shower. Mom's dragging me to some lunch thing." He shuffled upstairs, leaving me alone in the living room for the first time since the gym. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding and set the bottle on the coffee table, rubbing my eyes. My whole body was buzzing, not just from the workout, but from everything that happened afterward. Then I heard footsteps behind me, not Ethan's. Too heavy, too steady. "Feeling okay?" Mr. Carter's voice came from the hallway. I turned. He was leaning against the doorframe now, freshly showered, hair still damp, wearing a clean gray tee and joggers. He looked younger like that, relaxed, softer around the edges. "Yeah," I said, though my voice sounded embarrassingly small, "just processing." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "Processing the workout?" I hesitated. He caught it instantly. "Or processing something else?" he added, quieter. I swallowed. "Both." He nodded once, slow, understanding, then walked a few steps into the living room, stopping near the armchair. Not too close, not too far. He sat on the edge of the coffee table, hands clasped loosely between his knees. "Listen," he said, eyes on me, not the floor, not the wall, me. "I don't want you feeling weird around me. I meant what I said in the car. Nothing has to change." It already changed. I said before I could stop myself. He inhaled softly. Not annoyed, just acknowledging it. "Maybe," he said. "But we get to decide what happens with that." Silence wrapped around us again, but this one felt different from the locker room. Less sharp, less electric, more vulnerable. He leaned forward a bit. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "When you looked at me earlier, did that scare you? Or did it just surprise you?" My breath hitched. This was the kind of question you couldn't answer halfway. Not with someone like him. Not after what happened. "It didn't scare me," I said honestly. "It just surprised me that you noticed." A small, almost invisible smile tugged at his lips. "I'm a dad. I notice everything." "That doesn't help," I muttered, forcing a weak laugh. He chuckled. "Fair." Then his expression softened, the humor fading into something gentler. "You're a good kid," he said quietly, "and the last thing I want is for you to feel like you did something wrong. You didn't." I nodded, though my chest still felt tight. "And," he added, "I want you to know something else." I looked up. He held my gaze, steady, warm, unmistakably sincere. "Attraction isn't something you can always control, but boundaries?" He tapped his chest lightly. "Those we can." My throat felt thick. "So, what now?" "Now?" He smiled softly. "Now we act normal. You hang out with Ethan. You come over whenever. You and I go to the gym if you want. And whatever happened today stays where it belongs." I swallowed. "In the locker room," he nodded. "Exactly." I didn't say anything. I just stared at my hands, tracing the condensation on the bottle, trying to gather myself. After a moment, he stood and rested a hand lightly on my shoulder, just for a second. But it carried more meaning than anything he'd said aloud. You handled it better than most adults would, he said. I'm proud of you. Before I could react, Ethan clattered down the stairs again, yelling something about losing his wallet. Mr. Carter stepped back immediately, his expression shifting back into regular dad mode. But the moment? The warmth of his hand on my shoulder? The careful honesty in his voice? That stayed with me. And I realized right then, this wasn't going away. Not for him. Not for me. Ethan eventually found his wallet, under a blanket he'd been sitting on the whole time, and rushed out the door to meet his mom. The second it closed behind him, the house dropped into a quiet so sudden it felt intentional. Just me and Mr. Carter. Again? I heard him in the kitchen, opening the dishwasher, moving plates around, trying to keep busy. Trying to give the moment an easy shape so it didn't feel like we were standing on top of the tension neither of us could quite name. I sat on the couch for a minute, staring at the dark TV screen, telling myself to relax, to breathe, to be normal. But the pull, the awareness was still there, humming beneath everything. Finally, I stood and walked toward the kitchen. He didn't look up right away. Just kept placing silverware in the drawer with that quiet, methodical calm he always seemed to carry. You don't have to stay, he said without turning around. I know you're tired. I'm not really tired, I admitted. Just thinking. He paused, one hand lightly resting on the counter. Then he exhaled softly and turned toward me. About earlier? He asked. I nodded. He wiped his hands on a towel and leaned against the counter, ankles crossed, posture relaxed. But his eyes weren't relaxed at all. They were sharp, attentive, reading me. You want to talk about it? He asked carefully. Did I? Yes. No, I didn't know. But the words came anyway. I've never had something like that happen, I said quietly. Not with someone who actually saw me. He lifted his eyebrows a little, like he understood something I hadn't said. That's a big thing, he said softly. Realizing someone sees you. I nodded, throat tight. Yeah, and it makes things confusing, he added. Voice low but steady. Especially when it's someone you didn't expect, I swallowed. Is that what this is? Confusing? For you? Probably, he said. For me? He hesitated, then sighed through his nose. It's complicated. The word hung between us like a warning. I moved to the other side of the island counter, giving him space but still wanting to be part of the conversation. My hands toyed with the edge of a placemat. I don't want things to be weird, I said. They don't have to be, he replied gently. You've handled today with a lot of maturity, more than most adults I know. That shouldn't have mattered as much as it did. But it did. He pushed his hair back. It was still damp from his shower, and looked at me in that same measured, steady way he always did right before saying something important. Let me be honest with you, he said, his voice lowering. I'm not blind. I'm not unaware. And I'm not made of stone. I felt heat crawl up my neck. But I'm also your friend's dad, he continued, more firmly now. There are lines I won't cross. Not because I don't notice things or because I'm pretending I didn't feel something in that locker room, but because the responsibility is on me, not on you. My heart skipped. He felt something. He admitted it. He didn't hide from it. He didn't lie. He didn't pretend. He just stood in it with both feet on solid ground. What if I didn't want to ignore it? I asked before I could overthink it. He closed his eyes for a second, just 1 second, and when he opened them again, something softer flickered there. Something nearly vulnerable. That's exactly why I have to, he said quietly. We didn't speak for a long moment. The kitchen hummed with refrigerator noise, the faint ticking of the wall clock, and our uneven breathing. You're kind, I said finally. Kinder than most people give you credit for. He huffed out a breath that was almost a laugh. Is that what you think? It's what I see. His jaw tightened, not in anger, but like he was trying not to react. He crossed his arms and looked down at the counter, shaking his head once. You're going to make this harder. My chest tightened. I didn't mean to. I know, he murmured. Another silence fell, but this one felt different. Heavier, warmer, stretched tight like a cord between us. He pushed away from the counter then, walking toward the sink just to do something with his hands. He grabbed a glass, filled it with water, but didn't drink it. "You should probably head home soon," he said, staring into the sink. "Just so you can rest. And so we don't complicate this more than we already have." Something inside me pulled forward. Not physical, just instinctive. A tether. "I don't want to leave," I admitted. He set the glass down carefully. Too carefully. Like he was controlling every inch of himself. Then he turned, leaning back against the counter again, arms braced at his sides, shoulders tense. "Don't say things like that," he said, voice low. "Why not?" "Because I'm trying really hard to be the adult in the room." He said it like it was a burden. A choice he wasn't entirely certain he wanted to keep making. I took one step closer. Just one. He saw it. He felt it. His eyes flicked to my shoes, then back to my face. "Please," he said softly, almost pleading. "Don't." I froze. Not because of fear, but because there was something raw in his voice, something that told me exactly how thin the line was beneath us. "I'm not trying to push anything," I whispered. "I just don't know what to do with how I feel." He swallowed hard. "You don't have to do anything with it," he said. "Feelings don't become less real just because you don't act on them." I nodded slowly. He stepped forward then. Just half a step, but enough to change the air between us. He reached out, hesitated, then lightly squeezed my shoulder. The touch was barely there, but it felt like it traveled all the way down my spine. "You're okay," he murmured. "I promise." He let go before it lingered too long. We stood there, breathing the same charged, quiet air, not touching, but not quite apart either. And I knew, without him saying anything, that this wasn't over. Not even close. Ethan came back downstairs only a few minutes after that, phone in hand, complaining about his mom texting him 3 times in a row. The moment he appeared, Mr. Carter stepped back from me so smoothly it was like nothing had ever happened. But I felt it. The shift. The warmth still lingering on my shoulder. "Found my keys," Ethan said, waving them triumphantly. "Dad, can you drop me off? Mom's already outside the store freaking out like it's Black Friday." Yeah, Mr. Carter sighed. "Get your shoes." Ethan disappeared again, and suddenly, it was just us in the kitchen one more time. A half-finished moment hanging between us, waiting for someone to claim it. He didn't speak for a second, just exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "You good?" he asked. It was such a normal question, delivered so casually, but the way his eyes swept over my face, the quiet worry tucked behind the calm, made my chest feel too tight. "Yeah," I said, "I'm fine." He nodded once, though he didn't look entirely convinced. Ethan thundered back down the stairs, grabbing a granola bar on the way out the door. "See you later?" he asked me. "Yeah," I said, "probably." He didn't notice the tension at all. He never did. He just ran outside, already yelling something to his mom. Mr. Carter stood at the door for a moment, keys in hand, then turned back toward me. "You staying here?" he asked. There was something layered in the question. Something subtle, if that's okay. "Yeah," he said, almost too fast. "Yeah, of course." He hesitated, just a fraction, like he wanted to say more. Then he nodded, steadying himself, and headed out the door. The house fell quiet again. Not peaceful quiet. Charged quiet. The kind that settles on your skin instead of the air. I sat back on the couch, trying, again, to breathe normally. But all I could think about was the last hour. His voice, his eyes, his hand on my shoulder. The restraint he kept trying to wrap around himself like a safety harness. And the thing he wouldn't say. That he felt something too. Not safe enough to act on it, but real enough that ignoring it was its own kind of tension. When they returned 20 minutes later, I pretended to be watching TV. Ethan bounded past me to grab snacks. Mr. Carter walked in slower, quieter, his eyes flicking toward me in a split second of acknowledgement before he opened the fridge. "Want anything?" he asked. "Water's fine." He handed it to me. Not tossed, not slid across the counter. Handed it, closely enough that our fingers brushed. Brief contact, maybe accidental, maybe not. My stomach flipped anyway. Ethan didn't notice. He was already halfway through a bag of chips. So, Ethan said, flopping onto the couch, "You guys want to do anything later? Movies? Games? Food?" "I've got paperwork," his dad said, "and chores, but you two can do whatever." He said it casually, but he kept his eyes on me. Longer than he meant to. Longer than was safe. Ethan didn't catch it, but I did. We both did. I sat there for a moment, the water bottle cold against my palm, the house warm with late afternoon sun, and something inside me shifted, decisive, slow, certain. "Actually," I said, looking at Ethan, "I should probably head home for a bit. I left some stuff unfinished." "Oh," Ethan said. "Okay, you coming back later?" "Yeah," I said. "Probably tonight." Mr. Carter glanced up, expression unreadable, controlled. But something flickered in his eyes, surprise or relief, or maybe confusion about why that answer mattered to him at all. "I'll give you a ride," he said quickly. Ethan snorted. "You just love being everyone's Uber." But Mr. Carter didn't laugh. He just waited. I grabbed my bag, said goodbye, and followed him outside. The minute the front door closed, the air felt different again. Not dangerous, not forbidden, but honest. We walked to the car in silence, and the tension wasn't the sharp, overwhelming kind from the locker room. It was something deeper, calmer. Like both of us were finally acknowledging the truth, even if we weren't saying it out loud. He started the car, pulled out of the driveway, and only when we were halfway down the street did he speak. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, eyes still on the road, "I'm glad you're coming back later." My breath hitched. "You are?" He nodded once. "Yeah." "Why?" A small, tired smile tugged at his mouth. "Because I like having you around. And because avoiding you wouldn't actually fix anything. It would just make things weirder." I swallowed. "And we don't want that." "No," he said. "We don't." We rode the rest of the way in thoughtful silence. No flirting. No loaded stares. No complicated lines crossed. Just honesty. A raw, quiet understanding that something was happening. Something neither of us planned or knew how to name yet. When he pulled up in front of my place, he didn't turn off the engine. Didn't unbuckle, just rested his hands on the wheel and looked straight ahead. "You okay?" he asked again. It wasn't a filler question. He meant it. "Yeah," I said softly. "Are you—" He hesitated, jaw tightening before he answered. "I'm managing," he said. "It's complicated." I nodded. "I know." He finally looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment neither of us breathed. "I'll see you tonight," he said. Not a question, a quiet promise. I got out of the car, my heart pounding, and as he pulled away, I knew, whatever this was, it wasn't slowing down. It was accelerating, and tonight might change everything. I spent the next few hours pacing my apartment like I was waiting for something to explode. I couldn't focus on anything. Not food, not my phone, not the laundry I'd meant to fold 3 days ago. I just kept thinking about that ride home, the way Mr. Carter had looked at me, the way he said, "I'll see you tonight." It wasn't flirty, it wasn't teasing. It was sincere, and that scared me more than anything. It wasn't the usual older guy situation I'd half imagined in random daydreams. This wasn't some fantasy where I was the young guy tempting someone into doing something reckless. This felt real, complex, careful. And the careful part? That was what got to me. He was careful because he respected me, and that meant he wouldn't make the first move, wouldn't break the line, wouldn't risk losing the boundary we were both tiptoeing around. But I didn't know how long we could stay balanced like this. I showed up around 6:30 that night. Ethan was in the backyard grilling burgers, which was honestly surprising since he barely knew how to boil pasta. But he was wearing a goofy apron and waving a spatula like he'd been doing this every weekend of his life. "There he is," he called when I stepped through the gate. "You ready to taste my carbonized meat failure?" "Already regretting it," I said, grinning. Mr. Carter was by the patio table, setting out plates and drinks. He looked up when I walked in. His eyes caught mine for half a second. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, but my chest lit up like a struck match. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. But his whole posture softened, just a little. Ethan kept talking, ranting about how YouTube grilling tutorials made it look way easier than it was, and how steak temperature charts are a scam invented by Big Thermometer. Mr. Carter chuckled at that one, shaking his head. But under all the joking, something else was still there. I could feel it pulsing beneath the evening calm. The air between us wasn't crackling anymore. It was quieter now, heavier. Like everything we didn't say had started to take up physical space. After dinner, Ethan ran inside to grab dessert, and I stood near the railing, watching the sky bleed from blue to purple. Mr. Carter came up beside me, holding 2 glasses of water. He handed me one without a word. "Thanks," I murmured. He nodded, resting his forearms on the railing. For a moment, we just stood there, side by side, sipping quietly. Then he spoke, voice low and even. "I almost didn't let you come back tonight." I turned toward him slowly. "Why?" "Because I thought it would be easier," he said. "To keep things clear, safe." I nodded. "But it wouldn't have been, right?" He glanced at me. "No, it wouldn't." The cicadas buzzed in the trees. A car passed somewhere down the block. I shifted my grip on the glass, trying to keep my hands from shaking. "I'm not asking you to do anything," I said quietly. "I'm not expecting anything. I know, but I also can't pretend nothing's there." He didn't speak for a long moment. Then, finally, he said, "Neither can I." Those words made the air feel different, heavier and lighter all at once. He looked at me then, more directly, and I could tell this was the part he'd been holding back all day. "There are things I've ignored for a long time," he said. "Parts of myself I've put away. Told myself they didn't matter." His voice wasn't shaky, but it was different. Rougher. Like he was pushing through a door he wasn't sure should be open. But today, with you, it wasn't something I could brush off. And it scared me a little. "Because of Ethan?" I asked. "Because of everything," he said. "Your age, our dynamic, the consequences." I nodded slowly. "So, where does that leave us?" He exhaled. "In limbo." I hated how honest that was. But I respected it too. "Do you regret anything that happened?" I asked, eyes on his. "No," he said immediately. "Not a second of it." The answer was so fast, so certain, it hit me like a wave. I stepped a little closer. He noticed. His breath caught, subtle, but enough to change everything. "You said earlier you're not made of stone," I said. "So what are you made of?" He smiled softly, eyes dropping for a moment before meeting mine again. "Discipline," he said. "Responsibility. Restraint." "Is that all?" He laughed quietly. "No, not even close." I took one more step, close enough to feel the warmth radiating off him. His voice dropped into something almost imperceptible. "Don't," he said, but it wasn't firm. It wasn't a warning. It was a whisper. A test. So I stopped moving. But I didn't back away. "I'm not going to make this harder for you," I said, "but I won't pretend I don't feel it." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, very slowly, he reached out and brushed his fingers along my wrist. Barely a touch, just enough to feel skin. "I feel it too," he whispered. The moment stretched out like a thread pulled taut. Then Ethan slid open the back door with a loud bang. "Hey, I found the good ice cream!" We jumped apart instinctively, but the moment was already done. Mr. Carter stepped back, straightened, composed himself like nothing had happened. I followed him inside, heart pounding, skin still tingling where his fingers had touched mine. Nothing had happened. But something had definitely happened. And it was only getting harder to ignore. The rest of the evening played out like any other hangout at Ethan's place. Movies, snacks, dumb jokes. But underneath all of it, something different pulsed like a heartbeat only he and I could hear. Every time he walked past me, my skin prickled. Every time I caught him glancing over, my chest tightened. Every time he cleared his throat or shifted his weight or ran a hand through his hair, I wondered if he was thinking the same thing. What now? Ethan eventually passed out on the couch halfway through the second movie, arm hanging off the side, mouth slightly open. Classic. I grabbed a blanket and tossed it over him, careful not to wake him. Mr. Carter switched off the TV, the room dimming to a soft glow from the kitchen light. "Looks like he's down for the count," he murmured. "Yeah," I said quietly. "He's done." For a moment, neither of us moved. The house felt too still, too intimate, too full of unspoken things. He walked to the kitchen, and I followed, unsure if I should or if my feet were moving on their own. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed lightly, not defensive, just contained. "You heading out soon?" he asked. "I guess," I paused. "Unless you want me to stay longer." His eyes flicked up. Just a tiny movement. Just enough. "That's not a fair question," he said softly. "Why not?" "Because part of me wants to say yes." He paused, steadying himself. "And the part that has to be responsible knows that's exactly why I should say no." I swallowed. "I'm not trying to make you cross a line." "I know," he said. "You've actually been incredibly respectful. More than I expected." I leaned against the opposite counter. The distance between us felt small, smaller than it should have. "I don't want this to feel like some mistake," I said. "I don't want you thinking you led me on or anything." He shook his head. "You didn't imagine anything. I wasn't blind today." His jaw tightened slightly, just for a second. "And that's on me." "But you didn't do anything," I said. "You didn't cross any line." "That doesn't mean I didn't feel something," he said quietly. Then, "And that's what complicates everything." The honesty hit me like a warm punch to the chest. I stepped forward, not all the way, but just enough to show I was still there. Still listening. Still open. "Can I ask you something?" I said. He nodded slowly. "Yeah. Do you wish today hadn't happened?" His eyes softened. Completely. Unmistakably. "No," he said. "I don't." Something inside me loosened, like I'd been holding my breath without realizing it. "But," he added, "I'm not going to pretend it can become something. You deserve someone who can be fully available to you. Someone you don't have to hide. Someone who doesn't come with this much baggage." His voice cracked. Not much. Just enough for me to hear the truth under it. "And I can't be that person," he finished. I let his words settle. They didn't sting. They settled like something I'd expected but hadn't acknowledged out loud. "I'm not asking for that," I said quietly. "Not right now, not anything." He looked at me, searching my face. "Then what are you asking for?" I thought about it. Really thought. And the answer was simple. "To not pretend today didn't happen," I said. To not pretend something wasn't there. He inhaled slowly, like the truth hit him harder than he expected. "I can do that," he said. "I can be honest with you." We stood there in the kitchen, the fridge humming softly, Ethan snoring in the next room, the air thick with everything said and unsaid. He stepped toward me. Just one step. Enough to shift the entire atmosphere. He lifted a hand like he was going to touch my arm, then paused, fingers hovering in the air. "I shouldn't," he whispered. "You didn't," I whispered back. He let his hand fall slowly to his side. And somehow, that restraint, the choice, the intention, felt more intimate than anything physical could have been. He stepped back. "I like having you here," he said. "I hope you know that. I do, and I want you in my life, just in a way that doesn't get messy. I can handle that." "Can you?" he asked, voice gentler than ever. I thought about the locker room, the car ride, the quiet moments, the honesty. "Yeah," I said. "I think I can." He nodded slowly, relief washing over his features. "Good," he said. "Then take care of yourself, and text me when you get home." "Text you?" I teased lightly. "Not Ethan?" A faint smile curved on his lips. "Both." I grabbed my things, glancing back one last time before heading out. He stayed in the doorway, watching me with that same quiet, careful warmth. "Good night," he said softly. "Good night," I echoed. And as I stepped into the cool night air, I realized something important. Not every connection has to be acted on to change you. Not every almost has to become something to matter. What happened that day at the gym didn't turn into some dramatic romance. It didn't cross lines. It didn't become something it shouldn't. But it did open something in me. And in him. Some doors don't lead to a path. Some just open to show you what's possible. And sometimes, that's enough.